Is nuanced. Life is nuanced. And if you don't know what nuanced means, I'll go ahead and read you the definition just because it really is that important. And I feel like there's a lot of people that don't really understand what I mean by this. Nuance is a subtle difference in shade or meaning of expression. So I'll go ahead and explain my perspective for today's episode. But if you do not know who I am, my name is Champ, and I help men build their foundation of masculinity. This is episode 225 of the Life of Champ podcast, talking about how life is nuanced, right? So I kind of came up with this idea through just my observations about a lot of advice that was given, right? There's so much advice that is given, and there's so much suggestions on how you should live your life because people feel, and of course I'm guilty of this, right? People feel the need to want to give input to try to help people out potentially, right? Or to at least give them the advice that potentially could guide them in the right direction. But I feel like there's a lot of, especially in the self-improvement space, but there's so much advice that is being given out that has nuance without having said that there is nuance to the advice. But yet people take it so literally. And I want to just point that out because I just think it's very, very important, right? Make sure you go and follow me on Twitch, TikTok, Rumble, and on Spotify at Life of a Champ Podcast if you want to see me on other platforms as well. But getting into it, I first want to give you an example of what I'm talking about, right? So the first example I have for today is there's this narrative that men should, and I agree with this, and like I said, I'll mention the nuance, of course, right? That men need to be disciplined, they need to be hardworking, and they just need to be, they just need to have a certain type of work ethic that is almost extreme, right? This is what I see personally. I'm only speaking from my perspective, right? But there is this there is that perception that that men need to be really really hardworking, and of course I agree to an extent. But at the same time, I feel like there's some people who take it so literally, right? And I'm not saying that I'm not a hardworking person because I definitely most definitely am, right? I'm trying to better my life just like everybody else is trying to better their life. But the only difference is there are certain people that take that to the absolute extreme and then they neglect what they're actually working for, right? So, for example, right, the reason why hard work even means anything and even feels good is because you're doing it with purpose. You're doing it with the intent. You're doing it to hopefully still find time to spend with your family and your friends, the people that you love, right? To be able to do things with those people. That is the reward that you get from hard work. That is what you should feel as satisfaction for the hard work, right? So you don't feel guilty having a good time. That is the entire point of working hard, right? But there's certain people that just take that so literally because they want to have this almost status symbol that, oh yeah, I'm a very very hardworking person. And then here's the thing, there's work and then there's what you work for, right? If you're not enjoying what you work for, then how can you truly have purpose in the work that you're putting in, right? How do you truly have the purpose in the discipline and the hard work that's consistently being put in on a daily basis, right? So you must understand that when people give advice, right, when people give this un this unexplained nuances to their advice, right, you must understand that all they're trying to do is just emphasize the importance of these things, right? So that is what I'm doing. If there's any message that I put out, there's going to be some nuance, right? And when I say nuance, I mean it's going to be applicable in some aspects, right? But you must understand to not take it so literally, right? And I think this is a big big problem because people start to neglect the things that are very very important, right? And they don't take everything into account. They take it at face value for the advice that is being given, of course. I'm going to read I'm going to read some of these comments and then I'll get into it, right? It's important to not lose sight of why you're working. You're doing the work. Guys, I just okay. All right, KJ. All right, all right. So, essentially, that is essentially the concept for today's episode. I'm going to point out a few pieces of advice and hopefully you can go ahead and help me out as well. If you see any advice that people give that truly has a deeper meaning or truly maybe can even be misunderstood or misinterpreted, right? I want you to go ahead and leave it down in the comments because there's so much information, there's so much advice, there's so many people that think that they know what they're talking about, and then they'll give. And here's the thing: I would say that there is a lot of people that truly do know what they're talking about, but at the same time, the people that are trying to receive this message, the people that are saying the message, they might have a better grasp and a better understanding of this, but the people that are actually receiving the message, right? taking it in are just being a little bit too literal because they want to live up to the standard that they think that other people are living up to. But quite frankly, I would like to tell you that a lot of these people that are giving this advice, are they taking it serious? Yes. But are they also enjoying their life? Of course they are, right? And I'm not saying that you can't it's one or the other. I'm saying you can most definitely do both, right? So I'll give you another one. It is a virtue to have structure in your life, right? To be a person of structure, to have foundational habits that ground you in a life that is set for the most benefit, right? So, for example, let's just say you have consistent routines of going to the gym or working on a business or whatever it is, right? It doesn't matter really what it is, but you have foundational habits that ground you to that, right? So, yeah, like I said, you have that structure, which is absolutely needed. And I will go ahead and rant and rave about structure and needing structure in one's life. But at the same time, I'm never going to neglect the fact that you also need to be adaptable, right? There's going to be certain there's going to be certain seasons in life where things are going to change, and of course that's the way that it has to be, right? There's going to be reasons in which you need to change, and maybe some of the structure that you once had is not going to work in the next chapter of life. But I feel that there's people that are going to still cling on to this structure because that's all that they know, and of course they hear that people respect structure, they hear that people need structure, and of course people need structure. But at the end of the day, you also need to know when to adapt and to truly be understanding with how certain days go. Just because you didn't do your routine doesn't mean your day was an absolute failure, right? And of course, I'm guilty of this as well. I'm a very, very harsh critic on my own self. So if something doesn't go the way that I had planned it to go, right? Then of course I can feel some type of way, and of course I will I would judge the day based off of the fact that I didn't get done as much or I didn't stick to the structure as much as I typically do. But at the same time, that doesn't mean that day's wasted. That doesn't mean that day is not worth it. That doesn't mean that I didn't get the satisfaction of the day, right? If that makes any sense, right? That doesn't even mean that I didn't push the needle forward. But I feel like so many people, when 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 they hear be structured, or when they hear you need certain things that are going to deal with structure, and they defy, and maybe their routine is interrupted, or maybe the weekend comes and maybe they're a little bit off of their routine, right? I feel like they think it's the end of the world when in reality it's not, right? The question is, like I had mentioned, the certain people that are giving this advice of being structured understand that you must adapt to circumstances, right? And you must, when you're adapting to circumstances, let's just say you have an off day on the weekend, right? Let's just say your structure, I mean, let's just say you maintain some structure, but you neglect other structure to go ahead and enjoy the life that you're working towards or that you're building, right? From that essence, you need to go ahead and understand that when you're working for these things, you need to be able to lock back in, right? And that is the adaptability that I was talking about. Is how are you going to recover from the day that wasn't that structured, right? That is the nuance that I explained, right? Is understanding that you do need to be structured, but at the end of the day, even if you aren't structured, you're still going to be able to adapt, right? So I'm going to point out these certain things, and like I mentioned, feel free to leave some in the comments as well. Some advice that you think people take too literally, and people that don't understand that there is nuance in the advice that is being given, right? Things aren't so black and white. Things aren't so rigid as you think that they are, and especially the way in which people speak, right? A lot of people want to speak with conviction. Of course, I'm a person who speaks with conviction as well, right? I think it's very, very important. If you're trying to be somewhat persuasive, you're trying to be somewhat confident with your speech, you're going to need to be able to speak with conviction. But at the same time, I feel like people can get lost in someone it's with speaking with conviction, right? And when they get lost, they might take things a lot more serious than what the person that is even saying the message might take. So I just think that is interesting. So I think, yeah, that's pretty much what I have to say for that. So if you have any comments, feel free to leave it in the comments about maybe somebody taking something too literal, and I'll go ahead and give you some more examples as well. And yeah, I kind of want to dig a little deeper, right? I think it's just so interesting how the word that I want to describe it is just the unexplained nuances, right? That is something that people don't talk about, right? They just talk about the advice, they talk about what works and what doesn't work, but they don't talk about how and when it's going to work. Because it's almost like this, right? Good advice is only good advice if it's something that can be practically used in the moment, or in the situation, or in the chapter in life that you're in, right? But if it's not, that doesn't mean it's not good advice, right? It's nuanced. Good advice can be nuanced. It can work. The good advice that you took a year ago can work today, but it might not work today because it might not work. But that doesn't mean that it's not good advice. That doesn't mean that it can't help you, but it might not just be right now, right? So I feel like people need to understand that. So if you're trying to, yeah, yeah, people just need to understand that, right? The unexplained nuance, and taking that so literally, I feel like it can lead to people that are going to be having a more awkward upbringing, right? They take it too literal, and yeah, I just think people take it too literal, man. You need to understand when nuance is involved, and of course, you can only really understand that when you have perspective, right? When you have the perspective of afterwards, right? So I have done and have been super rigid on work schedules and needing to structure everything out, and whenever I defied, I felt like the world was falling down. But at the end of the day, I understood that at the end of the day, as the days went on, I understood that the unexplained nuance was you still need to enjoy your life. You still need to reap the benefits, or rather enjoy the benefits of the work that you are, yeah, of the you know what I'm talking about, right? You know what I'm talking about. You need to be able to reap the benefits of the work that you put in, right? And if you don't, then truly it's not worth, the juice is not worth the squeeze unless you can actually enjoy what you've been able to make. So yes, advice in life is situational, right? To be able to know when and how it should be applied is almost too inferred at times, right? So you must clarify situations and when it can be best used in. So I'll give you another example, right? So let's just say there is this narrative to want to be masculine, or this narrative to want to be stoic, or this notion that if you're in order to be more masculine, you need to be more emotionless, right? So people will take that to the absolute literal literal sense in trying to model this unrealistic expectation, or this unrealistic virtue that is purported, right? Which is stoicism, right? But you must understand that with that being said, and I'm not saying of course I understand the philosophy of stoicism, of course, right? But I feel like people, when they take it so literally, they just become awkward, right? And they don't necessarily express certain emotions the most healthy way possible, right? So maybe they're a little bit less empathetic, or maybe they're not as kind as they should be, just because they're so locked into this. They heard a few people talk about this, and they wanted to go ahead and apply the advice, and now they're awkward, right? So I just feel like you must understand that there is nuance involved. Yes, you should be stoic. You should be somewhat emotionless, but it's only going to really apply in certain aspects, and it's definitely not going to apply in certain aspects as well. So you must understand when it's going to work and when it's not going to work for you, because if you don't, just as so many people are, you're just going to be awkward. People are going to look at you very weird, and of course, it's almost like this. You want to stand out, don't you? Right? But you don't want to be sticking out like a sore thumb where people are looking at you like you're a fucking weirdo. And here's the thing. Some people will say, "Oh, I actually want to be like that because that really makes me different." But at the end of the day, you got to understand what makes you different and what makes you a fucking weirdo. An actual weirdo, right? Of course, I want to stand out. That's why I'm doing the things that I do, and I say the things that I say and believe the things that I believe. But at the end of the day, I'm not trying to be a weirdo. I feel like people, they think it's a virtue to try to be weird when it comes to that, right? When they take it too literal, they'll take it to the absolute extreme and then just say, "Oh yeah, it's just because I'm different." Bro, you are just a fucking weirdo. You're just taking this shit way too serious. And here's the thing. I'm not saying it's not even. What I'm trying to say is this, right? I'm a person who takes it serious, but then there's the people that take it way too far, and they don't really enjoy, and they don't really understand the message that is being purported, right? Understand that when people give advice, understand when you're trying to go ahead and better yourself, to not take it too literal. Is to understand when and where and how it should be applied, as opposed to just it being a permanent state of being, because that's not practical. That's not how life works. Life is ever changing. Life is ever flowing, right? And to reject that, and to think, otherwise is to be in denial of the way that reality actually works. And in truly, you're setting yourself up for failure, right? Because some of these things that exist are only practical in certain times. And if you try to make it seem like they're practical all the time, you're gonna run into issues, whether you know it or whether you don't know it, right? That's for damn sure. Exactly. He said, when I take advice too seriously, I became awkward not only with women but in general. Exactly. So, like I said, of course we want to be different, and of course you should be doing things that are truly going to make you different. But you must understand there's being different, and then there's just being fucking weird. So be able to differentiate the two. Understand that there is nuance. There's nuance that exists. You got to find and calibrate, right? I feel like there's a lot of people that they take it too serious, and then instead of just drawing back or learning how to regulate properly, they just fall off completely, right? They just think that it's just not the way, or it just didn't work. No, it just didn't work the way that you wanted to handle it. That's just what it is, right? It can work, and it should work, and it will work in certain ways, in certain seasons, in certain situations, right? But to make it seem like it's always going to forever be a thing that works perfectly is just ridiculous. It's having a missing perception. It's not being socially calibrated. So that's just what I think. Let me go ahead and read some of these comments. This concept also applies to the rascality mindset, the people who take YOLO too seriously, so they engage only in degenerate activities to appear more adventurous or wild, when in reality they just have no real control over their life. Exactly. Anthony said that perfect. Exactly. So it's almost like one of those things. Should you enjoy your life, right? You only live once, right? But that doesn't mean you need to go ahead and cash out. That doesn't mean you don't plan for the future. That doesn't mean you just have the best time you possibly can right now. That's not how this works, right? And I feel like yes, you only live once. So you must act like you only live once. Don't just and obviously tomorrow isn't promised, but at the end of the day, for most of us watching this, 99% of you, tomorrow is not promised, but you're going to live to tomorrow. So that's just what it is, right? At least I hope. At least I hope, right? But yeah, Anthony's 100% spot on with that. Another reason to not take advice too serious is because what might have worked for one person might not work the same for you and your life. Exactly. It's exactly a great comment. Yes. Things can definitely work for you. Things you can observe that things work for other people, but when you go ahead and apply them to your life, it might have just worked in that small nuanced season of their life. That doesn't mean it's going to work for you, or that doesn't mean it's going to work as good for you as it did for them, right? You got to understand your positioning in life. You got to be observant. You got to be conscious of where you are and what you're doing and what you're trying to do. And once you're able to have that clarity, once you're able to have that foundational structure of understanding, then you can begin to go ahead and plot, because then you'll know exactly what will work and what won't work, and what is the nuance and what isn't the nuance, right? You see what I'm saying? I'll read some more comments. How do I fix that and not take it too serious, but take it serious enough to be different? I feel like this is something that can only truly be. I could say this the actual, and this is the nuance, right? I can say it, but you need to be able to go ahead and calibrate it yourself, right? I feel like this almost isn't even something that somebody could. This is something that somebody could tell you, but you need to go out and live it and go ahead and calibrate it yourself. That's the only way that you'll be able to handle it, right? All I can say is don't take it too seriously. Learn to take it serious enough. But at the end of the day, life is ever flowing. And I really need you to take that with the most seriousness, right? That doesn't mean you slack off in whatever it is, right? It doesn't mean you slack off, and it doesn't mean you completely just stay all the way on. It just means you need to be in a state that where things can happen and things also are okay with not happening, if that makes any sense, right? Um, and of course, like I said, then you'll observe the people who take it to the extreme and it works out for them, and then you might take it to the extreme and it doesn't work out for you, right? You must understand. You must understand what I said earlier, right? You need to know when and where and if it is even going to apply to you or not. And it might apply to you in the future, but it might not apply to you right now. But you might try it right now and it might not work, and then you might say it's faulty. But it's situational and it's nuanced. So it might work later. You never know. But Yeah, I think this is something that only could truly be calibrated, and only the only real judge is going to be yourself, right? It's going to be, I don't know. I don't know. It's going to be yourself. You're going to be the one that calibrates it at the end of the day, right? You're going to see what works and what doesn't work, what's enough and what's not enough, right? I feel like there's a lot of people that think they get by with the not enough, and there's people that get by with doing way too much. I'm not even going to say get by. They don't understand that it's holding them back, right? You would think a lot of these things that people will go ahead and a lot of this advice that people will go ahead and take, it might work, but it might also run out of its potency. That's just what it is. And here's the thing, sometimes it does. It's nuanced, man. It's just nuanced. Like I said, life is ever changing, right? What happened in the last chapter isn't the next chapter. What worked in the last chapter isn't going to work in the next one. So it just, you got to understand. And like I said, I understand this is a broad topic, and I understand that this is semi complex, but at the same time, advice is nuanced. There is nuances in life, and all I'm trying to do is to help you become a little bit more aware of these things, because I do believe it most definitely can help you. And without taking that into consideration, it can most definitely hurt you. It can most definitely put you in a state of self-sabotage. It can most definitely put you in a state where you're overly judging yourself, right? And of course, I'm still a victim of this as well. Just as any person on the path to trying to achieve excellence should be a harsh judge. But at the same time, you must understand when things are unrealistic. When things are, and here's the thing. Of course, there's going to be people that think, "Oh, well, I don't believe in things being unrealistic. I have unlimited." It's almost like this, right? It's like, "Oh, I have unlimited potential," right? That's a great belief. And of course, I adopt that belief, and I adopt that mindset. But you must understand that even with that, you still have limitations, right? And here's the thing: there's going to be people that say, "Oh, when of course I have limitations," and then there's going to be people that say, "Oh, I really don't have any limitations at all," right? But it's just the belief itself that can say a lot, right? The main message that you would be putting out is, I truly believe in myself, and I know what I'm capable of doing, and I know I can be better than what I am. That is the overall message that's trying to be purported, right? But people will take it way too literally, or they'll take it way less literally than they're supposed to, right? Which is oh, of course I have limitations, right? You see what I'm saying? That's just that nuance that is that. And here's the thing: people don't understand that. They just take it one way or the other. But you must understand, there's a message that's trying to be put across. Do you understand the message, or do you not understand the message? Most people, they just won't understand the message. They'll get it wrong, they'll act out in the way, and then they'll become awkward. Hopefully that's not you, and if that's you, hopefully one day you'll learn to change it. That's all I have to say, man. But yeah, I'll read a few more comments. If you guys have any comments or questions before I go and end it off, feel free to leave it in the comments, whether you're rewatching this or watching this live. I would love to hear your contributions. But yes, life is indeed nuanced, and that's just what it is, man. That's just what it is, brother. The unexplained nuances in advice. It's just, you have to live and you have to experience enough. That's what I will say. You have to live and you have to experience enough to be able to understand and truly internalize all of these things. And if you don't understand it, you're definitely going to suffer. And that's something that I'm trying to help you avoid. Is with some of these things, it can lead to self-sabotage. It can lead to unnecessary suffering, right? And you don't have to suffer, right? As long as you're doing as long as you're completing the day's tasks, that's all you can really fucking ask for. But at the end of the day, there's going to be some days where you don't complete the life tasks, right? That's just what it is, right? There's going to be some days where you're going to be off, and that is okay, because here's the thing: life is nuanced. You don't always have to be on. But here's the thing: you will always need to be back on. That's for damn sure. And can you do that? Can you do that, or can you not do that? That's what it comes down to. Understand, with life being nuanced, there is enjoyment that still needs to be had. There's still going to be the off days. There's still going to be, oh, I'm locked in right now. Okay, it's like this, right? It's like this, right? People that say, oh, I'm locked in right now. Okay, you're locked in right now. But but in that process of you being locked in or whatever, you're still going to have off days. We won't. Most people don't want to talk about them, but because it's uncomfortable and because it goes against what you say, right? You're still gonna have off days. That's just what it is, right? Whether you're gonna have days that are bad, you're gonna have days that are good, right? In this, I'm locked in right now. That's just what it is. If we're being real, if we're being realistic, you're gonna have off days, and that is part of that nuance that people don't understand. And then when they see other people locked in, they think that people are locked in, and they're the absolute extreme of being locked in, and that's most likely not the case. Most likely, people are going to have off days, right? And I'm not saying where they're taking the day off. I'm saying where their performance or whether their actions are not as aligned as they possibly can be, right? It's understanding the nuance that exists. And I'm not saying to slack off. That's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying that it is even somewhat acceptable, but what I'm saying is you must be understanding of what this life has to offer and what life actually is and how practical these things are and aren't, and when they're practical and when they're not. And like I said, I understand it's complex, but hopefully you're keeping up. Exactly. Jaden's 100% right. If you're already a hard worker, you won't wish you worked more when you're on your deathbed. That's what it is. Because here's the thing. Those people, here's the thing. If you work your ass off, perfect, right? If you're on your deathbed, you're gonna wish you spent more time enjoying the fucking work, the fruits of your labor. That's just what it is. Wow, I really did work very, very hard. Man, I wish I actually enjoyed the fruits of my labor. That's exactly what you would think. Because here's the thing: what the hell are you working for? It's people turn they just they you got to understand. And here's the thing, and part of it's part of what that part of it is it's truly naivety, right? You're just naive. That's just what it is, and hopefully you become a little less naive with this podcast. But that's all I have to say for today's episode. This was episode 225 of the Life of Champ podcast, talking about life's nuances and understanding that truly there's a lot of advice that is nuanced, and most of it is unexplained or yeah, just unexplained, man. That's just what it is, man. So tap in with the next podcast on Thursday. I'm going to be trying to do more live streams. I have more of the tier list on the way. If there's any type of tier list that you feel I'd be good to speak on, feel free to leave it in the comments. And other than that, just follow me on all socials at Life of Champ Podcast on most platforms. And yeah, tap in with the next podcast on Thursday. Y'all have a good rest of your night. And before I go, I'll leave you guys off with the podcast motto. Fellas, out here, man, we don't just work around here, man. We outwork. So make sure y'all work at these motherfuckers because you know that I am and you know that everyone else around me is. Y'all have a good night.